Hi Gabby, thank you for joining me today and having all your data prepared. I have had a chance to go over it and I'm excited to see what our plans are going to be after this meeting. What our plans are going to be for our struggling students after this meeting. Okay, so just go ahead and walk me through the data and just that way we can go through our weekly data analysis or data conversation, and we can determine what we're going to do to help our students.
Okay, so for reading, 2 out of my 3 college houses met their goal. And then I have only 1 college house with 3 students that did not meet goal. We kind of knew since the beginning. We took them very slow and to avoid or to prevent pushbacks, right? And they were tested up and they were actually pushed back before the year ended. So that's how where we are with my 3 college houses for reading.
Okay, so let's use our template for the OCS, and as we're going through the data, you can record it. That way, it'll facilitate us from one area to the next. So for our first one, we were going over reading, right? Do you know the percentage for this? You're telling me 2 out of 3 college houses. How many students are those?
25.
25 out of.
That's total, and then 22 met their goal.
So 3 didn't.
3 didn't, and 1 of them is going to be retained. The other 2, we talked about retention, but we like me as a teacher, I think they can read. They're not meeting the
criteria.
The criteria from NIPI.
So they read, but they're just not. They're fluent.
They're actually started in a large group, in a group of 12, and then we reduced the size to I think 10. And then we reduce the size to 6, and then we reduce the size to 3, and it's doable, but they need to be at their own pace.
Okay, so
so it would be 92 out of
92%.
92%.
Okay, and then let's look at our causes for this. What do you attribute this to? Those 3 students that didn't meet their goal.
They always struggle with attention. It was very hard for them to stay focused, and you know how we do the lesson and then the story, and sometimes it's like eventually the stories got longer and the words were more complicated at the beginning of the program, and I think that's when it started affecting them. And it would take more than 1 day to finish a lesson, and ensuring that they were actually reading and able to read the story with the errors at how can you say
criteria?
Yes.
Okay, so so let's go ahead and jot down the causes. That way we can, once we have it and we're aware of them, we can determine what our solution is going to be.
Another thing that I think it contributed is that they're ELL kids, and we had the pictures, we had independent work aligned, but definitely the pace had to be yes.
Please, I want to get my snack. I want this. I only want this.
Okay, so I'm so sorry, Gabby.
That's okay.
So you thought it was the factor that they were in ELLs,
And we were
Be it-
trying to meet with lesson progress without sacrificing mastery, but it was very tricky with that group. Very tricky.
Okay, so so also the lesson progress, like the push, you feel that was like the like, what else? Do you think there's any other causes that contributed to this?
We tried so many things. We tried intervention. We had intervention. We didn't try it. We had intervention. We had pre-teach. We had homework. We talked to parents. We asked for support at home, and it just got to the point that it wasn't enough.
Okay, so now we're gonna look at specifically for Brown, that's the group, right? So specifically for Brown, we're gonna think about what we can do to help them and how we're gonna support them. So let's look at the big picture. What do you think the solution would be for these students?
Well, I think that right now that's something that's going to help a lot is that they're here for summer school, and we can really utilize this time to really get them to mastery, and we can also they were pushed back to lesson 101. So I think we have time to push for mastery or lesson progress without sacrificing mastery.
You want to write it down so that you can so summer school, having them here. But what specifically are we gonna do? Like,
well, we can continue to do the word attack warm-ups exercises for the next lesson, like for the lesson that they're gonna have the next day,
like a pre-teach. And what is that going to look like? Like, let's look specifically into what's that going to look like. So, summer school, so that's like the big picture. They're here for summer school. So, we're looking for Brown. They're here for summer school. And now we're going to do warm-up for the, so I'm going to write down the warm-up. And now let's even hone in further and like, what is that warm-up going to look like? So, it's going to be pre-teaching the lesson. What else? What else could that warm-up contain?
I actually have like booklets with the words, the possible words that might give them trouble during the story and during the lesson. So we would go over them, and until I get 0 errors, we can stop with the warm up. That way, when we do the lesson and the story the next day, it can be a little bit faster. And
so like a word attack also
yes.
for the warm up. Okay. So it'll be the pre-teach of the lesson.
Do it utilize independent tables to help them master these words. Align independent work to very specific skills for that lesson, so we can also help with mastery.
I think that's a great idea. And how do you think what's the impact of that gonna be?
Mastery.
But like mastery of what?
Mastery of the skills the required for that lesson. They should be able to,
like, for the words. Are you talking about like word accuracy or
I'm talking about fluency, I'm talking about word accuracy, I'm talking about those two things.
So then let's be specific. So ensuring mastery in like word accuracy, and also proficiency in the criteria that we have for the time allotment. So the fluency. Because like you were saying, some of those students, they're able to read. It's just at a much slower rate. So we have to increase their.
Also, I don't know if it helps, but Jaciel, the mom, brought us some papers from tests from his pediatrician, and we already filled it out, and they're gonna rule out any other
learning,
cause.
learning
Yes.
disabilities. Okay.
Learning disabilities. Yes.
So, regardless of what that, I mean, it's gonna take a while, right? But what do you think? What are some techniques you can use, like, to increase fluency? And I know we've used them before, like just little techniques that you can.
Well, when we're doing the story, they when they're reading like the sentence, we read word by word, and then we go back and I can ask them like read the sentence a fast way, and then we read the next sentence, and then they read those two sentences together, and then we add another one, and then they go back and then read those three sentences together. That we can also do it during independent work. We have a packet that helps them with fluency, where they start with with a word, and then it's two words. I think it's called
Stairs.
yes,
Yes.
and they add a word.
Yeah,
and
which
then
is like I can,
Mhm.
I can go, I can go.
and then at the end they answer a question, so they're not just practicing on their fluency and their accuracy. They're also working on their
comprehension. That's
skills.
great. So let's see. Can you pull up their last MT? I want us to look specifically at what they struggled with. And I know it's a little bit different in language. In language, we look like at what the skill was, and here it's a little bit different. But let's see what the criteria was for mastery. If it was like, and what specifically these students were. So now let's go a little bit further, and we'll look at those students.
Okay. So out of the three students, we were not testing one of them anymore because she was going to be retained. And then for Leonardo, we have the time, it's 3:19 with 4 errors, and he was able to pass the third time. The criteria was 3 minutes with 3 errors. So he's okay. I think he just needs practice, but with him, he hasn't been able to
pass.
So I think this pushback is going to
Awesome.
help him. Yes.
And so they're just a little bit above criteria, right? So like it's just for a few minutes that they're over. So definitely if they're, because also look at the errors. But they're over in errors, so if their errors were to decrease, I'm sure the third time would decrease as well, right? So yeah, I think the word attack that you're proposing is what they need, just to practice those words that you.
And I'm pretty sure it's going to help with both. They'll have the words fresh in their mind. It's going to help with them to read the story faster and with less errors.
Now, have you tried tracking for them?
Yes. Yes. With Jaciel, what he does is he's like, teacher, and then he looks at me. Call it out, and he uses a tone. And I try, yes, and I try, like I said, teacher. What word? Teacher. And when I'm like that with him, he does it.
So let's practice here. This is what I want you to try. I know you've practiced tracking with him, but let's practice this. We'll use this storybook.
Okay.
This is just a technique that you can use. So, and this is after you've done your story and everything. This is just like a little practice, extra practice that you can do specifically with Jaciel. So you read and so track with me. You're gonna track under Jaciel, and I'm gonna track over. Okay. You're gonna follow my finger. So let's start reading. Lots of men went down the road in a little car. I was going faster than you were, and so you were being forced and so we're just increasing the speed in there. And now that doesn't mean that maybe you're not going to know the word right away, but you're hearing me say it. So right now we're just working on picking it up, like working faster. So now let's practice. You do it. I be Jaciel and you'll be Mr.
Okay, Jaciel, you're going to track with me. I'm going to track on the top and you're going to track on the bottom. Okay?
Okay.
We're going to read together. Follow me.
Okay.
Lots of men went down the road in a little car.
Okay, good. And so, like, what after you do that for a few, like, this is gonna require a lot of one-on-one. After you do that for a few times, then y'all can alternate sentences. So then let's practice it like that. So you would read the first one. You're the teacher, and then the next one, I'm gonna read, but you're gonna move your finger quicker.
Track. Okay. Lots of men went down the road in a little car.
A cow was sitting on let's talk about, or let's define what our plan is going to be for them, because next week we'll be meeting again to see where they're at. We need to be monitoring them very closely because we don't have a lot of time. It's just the few weeks of summer school that we have. So we've talked about this. So what is we're going to implement pre-teach. We're going to implement pre-teach for Brown. And how are we going to do this pre-teach? So number one, what are we going to do? The first thing.
Are we gonna do
So it can be, we're going to implement pre-teach, reteach, intervention. Pre-teach, reteach, intervention. Intervention, right? So what are we going to do?
Pre-teach, reteach, intervention for Brown. Implement, pre-teach, reteach, intervention for Brown.
Yes, that's what we're going to do. Now, how are we going to do it? Let's do number one. And you talked me through it, but let's just make sure that we're on the same page. So
Okay.
what are we going to do first?
First, we're gonna start, pre-teaching the lesson.
For the following day.
Yes. For next day. Then we're gonna do the word attack warm up
So that's like the day of, like today we're doing lesson
Yes.
155. So we're going to do the warm.
before we do our lesson.
So okay. So before lesson.
Okay. And number 3 is gonna be the independent work. Align independent work.
But I want you to be more specific. So you're going to align it. What is it that you're going to be targeting in that independent work?
For example, the word attack. Some of the words from the
Oh,
word
the words
attack.
from- So to include, so align independent work to include word attack and most commonly missed words. And you have those lists, like they're goodbye lists. So you can utilize that. So how do you feel about this plan, Mr.
Prepare. Now
Prepare.
I feel commonly mistakes. Is that what you said?
Mm. And so what could you do, like at the end of the lesson, you finish your summer school day, what could you do to ensure that this is being effective every day? Like, or so that way you wouldn't have to wait till next week that we meet. What can you be doing?
Well, we can have an exit ticket or I forgot the word. Something to send home for they can work in it during with after school, and then they can bring it and we can see. Well, it would be more than the exit ticket.
Yeah, well, I like that you're saying that they can take something home and they can practice. I think that's a great idea. But I'm saying like, so that we don't wait until next week when you and I talk and say, okay, did it work? Did it not work? How did they do on their checkout? What can you do daily to know that this is happening? So like having a checkout, would that be your exit ticket?
We
Having
can
a
have,
checkout.
yes, we can. I can actually
And it's just 2 students, so this is something that you can
It's
do.
doable.
Yeah, it's doable. So doing a daily checkout with them.
I can ask them to read the story and check their times and their
And their
errors.
individual. I
Mhm.
like that plan. So that's a plan. And then I would like for you to track it. Maybe you could track it on the back of this so that when we meet next time, we can see. I mean, of course, you can revamp this at any moment if you feel like it's something that needs to change. But if then we can look at it next week when we look at your data, and we can also see how it increased or how it decreased or how it changed. What do you think? Okay.
Yes.
So sounds like a plan. Thank you very much, Ms. Tucker.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your help and your support.